What up, everybody? This is your boy Dedrian Colon from House of Rasslin, and this is my review for the January 13th episode of WWE Smackdown. Yes, Friday the 13th. Like, share, comment, subscribe. Give this video a thumbs up on YouTube. Follow me, Dedrian180, on TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram. So, tonight's WWE Smackdown. Well, we know what's been going on in the past couple of weeks. Man, it's already close to 2 weeks in 2023 already, and it's been a whirlwind of news regarding the WWE. Of course, the reports that was actually shot down with the private investment fund purchasing WWE and a deal being struck. Of course, the pool of potential buyers for the WWE, Disney, Comcast, private investment fund, and AEW's Tony Khan and Shad Khan also being in that mix, which was reported by CNBC and Berrien, which is a sister publication for the Wall Street Journal and the Dow Jones Company. So, man, there's been a lot of stuff. And this episode of SmackDown, I know there was a talent meeting earlier before SmackDown with Triple H, and he dressed the talent and everything. It's a really interesting time for WWE. I do believe this is like a first for WWE as far as being up for sale. I mean, we've always heard stuff like this with other wrestling companies in the past. Well, in my lifetime, I've heard it from everything from World Class, Jim Crockett Promotions, UWF, which was originally Mid-South, ECW, Smoky Mountain, like all these promotions, you've heard of things like this, but nothing like this attached to WWE until the past couple of weeks. So it's just a lot of uncertainty. And for me, I've been paying attention to more the vibe of WWE in the midst of all this going on. And man, it's 50-50. You can tell the optimism, the enthusiasm, the I don't want to say hope, but just the expectation and anticipation of, man, we're going to build some things and going forward, that you kind of sensed from July, SummerSlam till, Crown Jewel. It was just, there was a lot of enthusiasm. And then just after that, it was just almost like a holding pattern. And if you go back and watch my reviews as far as WWE, you'll notice I've said this before on a lot of reviews that it just felt like creatively the WWE was just like putting things on pause or just holding back on things until the new year to kick in. So it's just very interesting. And tonight's episode of SmackDown, it was a real interesting vibe. The opening match was really good. The ending was really good, but just it just felt weird. I don't know if that was me. You guys comment below if you felt something or anything, like if it just feels different. It doesn't feel like there's, they're tight, they're tense, or it's like, oh my God, I don't know what's going to happen. It just doesn't feel, lax as far as the optimism and enthusiasm that it had a few months prior, where it's just like, all right, cool, man, this is going to be cool, this is fun. Yeah, it's just really interesting. But before I get into this whole episode and just what I thought about SmackDown and just the vibe going forward and stuff like that, I'm going to give you guys the results. So we had Gunther defeat Braun Strowman. We had Tegan Nox defeat Xia Li. We had Raquel Rodriguez defeat Liv Morgan. And we had Kevin Owens defeat Sami Zayn by disqualification. So that was the results for W SmackDown for January 13th. So yeah, just looking at that card and just these matches, like, these aren't, like, I know some people are like, oh my God, it's just like, I will never say a card is bad, but it's very surprising just how this worked out. And it was just very, man, I will say this on this review. And for those of you who are watching it or going to watch the review, I'll give you some context. So, when WCW was up for sale and WWE bought it, I was 18 going on 19 years old. So I remember everything vividly. And I remember the talk of WCW being sold. And mind you, it was different circumstances. They were losing money. They were getting their butts handed to them by WWE in the ratings. Mind you, they were still averaging like 2 million viewers um, at that time and still getting their butts kicked. So that shows you how the gap between them and WWF was. Um, and through that whole time, like you could sense, like it's similar with WWE now, where granted WWE is not losing money, but just creatively and just the on-screen presence, it's very vague, and that's a term that I've used a lot describing WWE's storytelling outside of the Bloodline, Bray Wyatt. Trying to think of another storyline that Alexa Bliss is kind of in that Bray Wyatt stuff storyline. But yeah, it just felt just very vague, all these storylines. And at that time in WCW, it was just very vague. A lot of things, you probably heard the stories of, man, things didn't make sense. Or a better term was, there was not a, it was lacking fluidity and like just continuity and just that grit, that enthusiasm, optimism. And anybody who's a creative, whether it's professional wrestling, musician, actor, artist, when you have enthusiasm and passion behind your creation, there's an energy behind it that attracts people, that just people want to be a part of it. When you lack enthusiasm and optimism and just like, okay, you know, you're certain where things are going. When you don't have that, that also you send out that vibe to people, and that's what WWE is. What's happening to WWE now, and when I watched Raw this past Monday, it was similar. Like it's just there's they're there, and I'm not gonna say they're not there, but it just doesn't have the same enthusiasm, optimism, certainty, and just like, yeah, we're gonna go here, boom, 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 boom. The rhythm that WWE had, prior to Vince McMahon, returning to the board and everything. So it's an interesting time, and yeah, tonight's episode, man, it's just, man, it's not bad. Uh, it's for me, man. I gotta say, man, I had fun watching it. It was cool. It was like, all right, cool. Let me see how this works out. And, I know everything that's going on, but man, let me see what they give out to just entertain the folks and entertain the fans and everything. And for the most part, it was decent, but you can tell, like I said, that enthusiasm, that optimism, and that hope. It was just like, man. And for me, man, I want to say I'm somewhat disappointed in that. Not in the wrestlers, not even in Triple H and everything. When it was announced in December that Vince had filed this letter to the board that he wanted to return and stuff like that, kind of saw the writing on the wall. It's like, all right, he's going to return and everything. But it's disappointing because I was really optimistic to see, before this whole Vince thing happened, I was really optimistic to see how they would go into Royal Rumble and Elimination Chamber and WrestleMania. And tonight it was announced, like, it doesn't even feel like Royal Rumble is 2 weeks away. The build, the anticipation, of course, the Cody Rhodes video packages. He's probably going to be in the Royal Rumble, which I'm looking forward to that. But it does have a similar build to Survivor Series, where there wasn't a great big build to Survivor Series, and it just felt like everything was just put together, and then boom, there you go. And I mean, you had two decent War Games matches, but it just felt like it lacked a proper build, and that's what the Royal Rumble feels like. Mind you, only 2 weeks away, and then it's only 1 week away of the Raw 30th anniversary, and they've barely advertised that. Like usually, the previous Raw anniversaries, the 20th, and I believe the 25th, and I know the 10th anniversary, all those anniversaries, like they would promote it right, like they were promoted like halfway in December, and then they would just continue hyping it up until it got to that date, and they've barely hyped up the 30th anniversary of Raw, so it's interesting. But man, let's get into these matches. So you had Braun Strowman, Gunther. I mean, it started off with Braun and Gunther brawling outside. I enjoyed this match. I liked Braun Strowman's shoes. I mean, they mentioned on commentary that he lives like an hour and was it 90 minutes away, like 90 was it an hour and 90 minutes or 90 minutes away from Green Bay, and really cool. He's a Packers fan. I'm a Bears fan, so but no, all kidding aside, but no, it was really cool to see that. It's like, oh man, it's some different creativity for Braun Strowman wardrobe wise, but man, this was a decent match. There was a bunch of "Let's go Strowman" chants. Uh, Another point in the match, Strowman executed a spine buster. Then after that, Gunther executed a man. Those clotheslines were nasty, man. Then you had a top rope splash by Gunther, and Strowman kicked out. But eventually, in the end, Gunther executed a power bomb on Braun Strowman. He got the win, 1, 2, 3, and give me 1 second, guys. There we go. And Gunther is still the Intercontinental Champion. I've really enjoyed Gunther's run as Intercontinental Champion. It's like his run reminds me of like a run in the 90s of just this dominant champion that he's having these classic matches. Like his run is a throwback to some of the great Intercontinental Champions, Mr. Perfect, Bret Hart, Randy Savage. You throw in Shawn Michaels, Razor Ramon. Trying to think of who else. Um, Maybe when the Intercontinental Championship was going between Stone Cold, The Rock, and Ken Shamrock from that 97-98 period. I believe Triple H was an Intercontinental. Yeah, that whole period and stuff like that. Because those are names and everything. But yeah, I would put his reign up there. But man, this is really fun. And I know I'm jumping the gun, but later on he mentioned that he wants to main event WrestleMania, which the rumor has it's going to be him and Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania. Mind you, I believe that was before the whole Vince McMahon return and everything. If it's Braun Strowman, if it's Gunther versus Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania, man, we're in for a treat with that match, man. That's going to be a fun match, a physical match. What's crazy, I think I mentioned this on a few reviews previously. Gunther looks very similar to Killer Kowalski. Of course, that name rings a bell because that was Triple H's trainer, but go look it up, Google it, YouTube it, man. If you look at the pictures, like he's very similar to him, but man, this was a really impressive win. He beat Braun Strowman clean. Of course, you had Kaiser and Vinci come out and distract, but it wasn't anything that cost Strowman the match. It was just powerbomb, and he cleaned him. It's like, wow, like that was impressive. And he's had some really great matches as Intercontinental Champion. Of course, the one with Ricochet was just, man, that was fantastic. I'm really looking forward to seeing who is next that he will face. I kind of wish they would have Chad Gable and Otis like kind of break up or just do something different with them. But man, I would love to see Chad Gable versus Gunther. Trying to think of who else. I know Brock is up there, but looking forward to it, man. or actually Gunther and Bobby Lashley. There you go. That's a good one. That's a good one right there. So after that, you get a recap of Sami Zayn and Roman Reigns last week backstage, eating popcorn, watching the Usos and everything. And this episode of SmackDown, I want to say it really furthered the whole, how do I put it? The dissension between Sami and the Bloodline. And what I mean by that, where, last week you kind of seen the seeds being planted, and now they watered those seeds this week. So it's like, okay, we're watering it now. Now we're just gonna this is gonna grow. The acceleration growth is gonna be really big. So yeah, we have that. Then backstage, Sami knocks on the Bloodline's door. Paul Heyman opens up and he's like, "Yeah, the Usos aren't here." Which, remember that Paul Heyman said the Usos aren't here, and we know later on they were there. So there's, how would I put it? I know I'm jumping the gun in this review, but it's almost like, I'm not even going to say they're setting Sami up. He's like, they're getting him to the point where he doesn't know what to believe, and then when he's hesitant, they kick him out. And one line in this segment that I mentioned before, that every time Sami has won, it's been at the been because of the Bloodline, and he's never really won anything on his own. And so there's that, and it's like, hey, he's using the Bloodline, to get wins. He's getting more cheers than us. He's using us to get over and to get popular and get notoriety, and to get championships and just get more spotlight. So that's the basis of that storyline. When I said it was, just, it's going to be logical with the way they execute this. So the Usos aren't there. Paul Heyman says Tribal Chief wants you to do this by yourself. Sami Zayn says, "Hey, text him," and to make the right call. And Sami goes to Paul Heyman. It's not a prediction, it's a spoiler. Here's the key thing after this segment, or after he said that. He walks away, and Paul Heyman is just like, that expression is like, uh-oh. A look of disgust, and it's like, Sami, it's a matter of time. Matter of time before that happens. So when that happened, I'm just like, uh-oh. Oh, man, that turn is coming soon, man. It is coming soon. I don't anticipate it happening next week. I don't anticipate it happening at the Raw 30th anniversary. We might get more at the Royal Rumble. I do expect that to be the point where, like I said, they watered the seeds to the Sami getting kicked out, and I think that's where it goes from, we're watering the seeds for this turn, to where, it's grown. Like, it's grown to the point where it is obvious. It's only a matter of time before, at any show, they're going to turn on Sami. So that's what I anticipate. Let me know what you guys think. Comment below if you think it's going to be around that time, that it's just going to be, all right, it's only it's any given show, they're going to turn on Sami. From there, we get Rey Mysterio coming out. He says, "I didn't have a Merry Christmas." Dominic acting like a thug and a hardened criminal. It breaks my heart. I'm entering the Royal Rumble match. Karrion Kross comes out with Scarlett. He says, "You need goals and you don't know how to peel your ass out of bed because you're old." And he just throws all this stuff. He's like, 70 years was your last big win in the Royal Rumble. You weren't around for Dominic, and you don't have it And eventually, Rey Mysterio, he hits him. They go back and forth, and then Scarlett trips him as he attempted to do the 619, and then Karen Cross puts him in the cross jacket as he's uh, tapping him out. Scarlett throws up I believe, a tarot card or what have you, throws it up, and the camera gets a shot, and then everything's red, and that was basically it. Like, I like Karrion Kross, I like Rey Mysterio, I like Scarlett, but this is just like it would mean more if this feud was incorporated to the Rey Mysterio and Rhea Ripley attending holidays. Like, if there was a crossover at that point between these two where it's just like, oh, okay, where there was some like, okay, I get that this is you guys get what I'm saying? Like, it's just, it's of course it's separate, but it's like the feud just came out of nowhere, and it's like, all right, the stuff he's making sense, but like, it just doesn't have that, like, why should I care? Like, all right, you're having a feud to have a feud? Like, that's how it's being presented. From there, we get a backstage segment with Liv Morgan, Emma, and Maxine Dupree. And she's just talking about the Royal Rumble, and she's going to be the first. She's going in first in the Women's Royal Rumble. Raquel Rodriguez comes in, and she's like, doesn't it make more sense to be, the better chance you win of winning a Royal Rumble is being last, which makes a lot of sense. Like, if I want to win, I want to be towards the end, not start the Royal Rumble. And Liv Morgan's like, yeah. She's like, I read it in my palm, and she goes like this, and then she just smacks Raquel Rodriguez. And then Raquel Rodriguez steps up to her, and she says some stuff in Spanish, and Liv Morgan's like, you know what, I want you tonight. And so we got Liv Morgan and Raquel Rodriguez. So after that, we get Xia Li and Tegan Nox. This match, it was a decent match. I will say, this match, and as I mentioned earlier in my review, like, from this point on, like, a lot of things on this show felt like WCW from late 2000 before they got sold to WCW. And by that, I mean, Xia Li is a great wrestler. Tegan Nox is a great wrestler, but it was just a match. And what I mean by that, we haven't seen Xia Li in a while. We haven't seen Tegan Nox in a while. And it was just like, there wasn't anything, they haven't had any matches. So it was just like they put together. It was just really, I don't want to say weird, but it was just like, oh, this is a fun match. And it wasn't really that long or anything. It was just like, okay. And basically it was just Tegan Nox giving right hands to Xia Li. And Xia Li, of course, when the match starts, throws up, loser sign, which, okay. Then Xia Li throws Tegan Nox off the top rope. Then Xia Li misses a spinning kick, and that allows Tegan Nox to get the Shining Wizard. She gets the pin, 1, 2, 3. That was it. And like I said, it was just vague, like the story was just, like, the match was just very vague. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't like, oh man, this is just a fantastic match. Wow. I've loved Xia Li's stuff in NXT. Tegan Nox, I loved her stuff in NXT, but it's just like, that's it. It's like, all right, hopefully it's better. And again, it just feels like before the Vince thing, they were in a holding pattern storyline wise, just to start getting things moving and stuff like that. Because of course, Triple H had at least 20 wrestlers return within a 5-month period. So it's like, wow, you gotta give it time for it to, give these guys, these men and women, stories. Which I'm like, okay, that makes sense. Bring them in, but then once the new year, you just start building stories around them to give them these wrestlers something to do. And yeah, this match just really just felt like something that's just like, all right, we're doing it, but it's like, all right, it's just here. So I hope that's not the case going forward, because man, they're very talented, and it's kind of like shortchanging what they could be doing or how they could be presented in a more like enthusiastic, optimist, like, oh man, I want to see more of them. So then we get a digital exclusive of the Viking Raiders attacking Drew and Sheamus after SmackDown last week. Then we get a backstage segment with Drew McIntyre, Sheamus with Adam Pearce. They're chopping and slapping each other hard, just being alpha male, just slapping, and Adam Pearce just looking like, what the hell is going on here? Then they start slapping him, and Sheamus is like, I want the Viking Raiders. Or Drew McIntyre's like, I want the Viking Raiders now. And Sheamus is like, no, I don't care about the Viking Raiders. I want the Usos, and I want those tag team titles. And Adam Pearce is like, you know what? You're going to get a chance to get the Usos. But first, I'll give you guys the Viking Raiders in a SmackDown tag team tournament. And your first opponents will be the Viking Raiders next week. So, if you guys have been paying attention to Raw and SmackDown, we're basically going to get, they had a tournament for the Raw tag team titles and a tournament for the SmackDown tag team titles. So it does look like, as we get closer to Royal Rumble and more so WrestleMania, that they could be splitting up the tag team titles, which, yay, thank you. Hopefully you do that with the world titles. Yeah, I'm all for it. I mean, if the Judgment Day get the tag titles and let's say Drew and Sheamus get the titles and they're on separate brands, that would be dope. But again, it's thinking whether WWE is still under Vince McMahon or it's sold, and just like, I think that's the unfortunate thing about this whole news as far as the sale, is that we're really like, oh man, they could get this title, but then it's just that cloud of this whole WWE sale talk and potential buyers that just muddles every storyline that's going on, because it's like, oh, I want to get invested to the storylines, but man, I don't know what's going to happen. And it's not major, but as this goes on and as this whole sales talk prolongs, it's really going to overshadow anything storyline wise. So you get that. Then we get a promo by Bray. And they're like 2 weeks away. 2 weeks ago, I was Uncle Howdy, which was an interesting turn. It's like, he just admitted he's Uncle Howdy? Like, wait a minute, what the? Like, it was really interesting. There was a QR code that was flashed before. Like, there was a video package with QR code, and the QR code video was The Fiend, which is like, all right. And I think we will probably get the Fiend in the Bray Wyatt LA Knight lights out match at the Royal Rumble, but I don't think it's going to be Bray. I think it's more than likely going to be Bo Dallas, who's going to be playing the Fiend for Bray. That's where I think it's headed. But in this promo, Bray's sitting in the chair. He just shouts, "We're here." It's like, hey, that's a callback to with the Wyatt family. Like, so there's like all these elements of his previous characters coming together. So it's like, it's very interesting. So after he mentions that, he's like, I'm the eater of the worlds. I am Uncle Howdy. I am Bray Wyatt. At Royal Rumble, it will be my rebirth, which is a key term. He said, Royal Rumble will be my rebirth. What does he mean by that? Where does it go? That's going to be interesting. I do anticipate, like I said, we're probably going to get more from Uncle Howdy, probably a reveal, and possibly more with Alexa Bliss, because this past Monday, they went even into more of her going back to evil Alexa. So it's really interesting how that's going to play out. Then he talks to LA Knight, and he says, when the lights go out, you should run. And then they cut to the back. That was it. So yeah, it's interesting where this goes. It does feel like with this promo, they're accelerating the story, because I know that's been one of the things that a lot of WWE fans and wrestling fans in general have had about this storyline that, man, it just feels like it's dragging. Of course, for me, it's more the reason why it feels like this Bray Wyatt storyline is dragging is because outside the bloodline and Bray Wyatt, there's not a lot of storylines to get invested in, so this sticks out like a sore thumb. After that, we get Kevin Owens backstage. Sami Zayn interrupts, and Sami Zayn is like, it's your decision. And then KO's like, Roman Reigns is using you. And Sami Zayn's like, I'm not being used. And Sami Zayn's like, this is family. And Kevin Owens is just shaking his head, and Sami Zayn walks off. Pretty cool segment, is just adding more to that bloodline storyline. Then we get Liv Morgan versus Raquel. Before that, backstage, like I said, Gunther, he's with Kaiser and Vinci, and he talks about momentum, setting an example for being an Intercontinental Champion, and his goal is to go to WrestleMania and main event. So, see where that goes. We know that, again, like I said earlier in this review, Brock Lesnar is probably his opponent for WrestleMania. But Liv Morgan, Raquel, had a lot of brawling. There was a nice clothesline by Raquel. There was a nice clothesline by Liv Morgan on Raquel over the top rope. Raquel was driven into the post and the steel steps. Then there was a point where Liv pulled out a table, which was never used. Then there was a point where Raquel Rodriguez swatted Liv Morgan as she dove. Then that set up the Tejano Bomb. 1, 2, 3. That was it. Yeah, these women matches for SmackDown were just very vague. Of course, there's a story with a slight story with Raquel Rodriguez and Liv Morgan, but it just felt, like I said, a lot of the story is just very vague in the WWE. It's very, it feels like there's a void of enthusiasm, optimism, certainty. It does feel like the confidence is taking a step back. I don't know if that has to do with the talk of a potential sale, the talk of maybe Vince McMahon's going to get back into creative. It was mentioned or reported in the talent meeting that Vince and Triple H mentioned some things as far as creative. Like, I don't know if that plays into it, but yeah, I'm disappointed because, man, I really was looking forward to the Royal Rumble, Elimination Chamber, WrestleMania. Like, man, all right, this is cool. Hey, I love AEW and what they do, but man, I'm really interested in what's going to happen here. Cody's coming back, the whole Charlotte. Like, all right, man, let me see what's happening over here. And it's just like, oh, man, come on, man. Like, like, really, Vince? Like, really? We're doing this? It's like, so we shall see. Then they talk about last Friday with Charlotte and defeating Sonya. Then we get a backstage segment with Adam Pearce, and Sonya interrupts, and she's like, I want a rematch. He's like, yeah, you probably want me to get in the Royal Rumble and defeat. He's like, yes. And, he made a very good point. Like, Adam Pearce is probably one of the most underrated authority figures in WWE history. He made a very good point when he was talking with Sonya Deville, and she's like, why don't I get a title shot? He's like, well, Charlotte called her shot to Ronda Rousey. She won. You called your shot. You lost. That's it. There's no rematch. And her final words before she walked away was, I'll find a way to get that title shot. So we go to commercial. We come back, and Charlotte and Sonya are fighting in the back, and it's brawling and everything, and they're separating and stuff like that. Adam Pearce comes in, he separates and all that other stuff. Then we get a video package of Cody Rhodes, which, man, I can't wait for Cody Rhodes to come back. Like, in the midst of all this talk of what's happening with WWE and the sale and everything, like, man, he is going to be a light in the midst of all this chaos and stuff like that is just seeing him come back, return from injury, hearing wrestling has more than one royal family and adrenaline in my soul. Just hearing that and him, yeah, like you can't help but like Cody Rhodes, man. And he's one of my favorite wrestlers. And man, I'm looking forward to it, man. I'm really looking forward to him returning and man, give him that WWE championship, man. Like that's all I'm waiting for, man. That is going to be a sweet moment. From there, we get Kevin Owens versus Sami Zayn. I don't know how these guys are walking after this match. I know both these guys are taking ice baths, not ice showers, ice baths, because the moves that they executed in this match was, man, my body was hurting. You had Sammy do a brain buster on the apron on KO, which looked nasty. Then you had the Blue Thunder Bomb. Then you had a German suplex by Sammy. Then a clothesline from KO. Then you had a Swanton by KO, which was countered by Sami Zayn lifting up his knees. You had a This Is Awesome chant. KO executed a brain buster off the top rope on Sami Zayn. After that, the Usos come in the ring, and mind you, Sami Zayn gets disqualified. They beat him up, and man, the way they interacted with Sami Zayn was so sarcastic and condescending. Like, it's just like, yo, they're like, it felt like when all that was happening, it felt like they were going to turn on him right there. And it's like, man, the way the Usos were like, yeah, come on, man. Yeah, yeah. And it's like, man, they running game on you, Sammy. They are running game on you. And so the Usos come out. They're beat up KO. Sammy is in shock. Solo does a Samoan spike. They're Jamie and Jey Uso, they're doing We the Ones, and then Solo Sikoa, as Kevin Owens is laying on the commentator's table, he runs and does a splash on there, and you see Sami Zayn just in disbelief, and you got the Uso, Jamie's doing the whole handshake with him, and Sami Zayn is just like, I had him won. So it just feels like after this that the bloodline is pushing Sami Zayn to the point where he's like, man, you guys don't let me win on my own. And of course, people are like, oh, well, that doesn't make sense because, they always let him win. And, why would they push him to that point? It's because, like Kevin Owens has said, they're using him. Like, he's just a pawn. He ain't family. Like, he is just an end to the, a means to the end. That's what he is. And I do feel that's what's going to happen. The bloodline is going to push him to the point like, hey, I can't win on my own. And then they're like, oh, so you don't need us. So it's just a very manipulative, condescending, sarcastic, narcissistic relationship the bloodline has with Sami Zayn, where Sami Zayn just snaps out. He's like, you know what? I don't give a hell crap anymore. You guys are only using me, blah, blah, blah. They beat him up, and then that eventually lead to Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens reuniting and facing the Usos for probably the SmackDown tag team titles, which that should be pretty cool. Possibly at WrestleMania, which that's ideally what it should be, but of course things can change now that Vince is back. So yeah, I'm interested in that. But yeah, that was SmackDown, man. Like I said, this was an interesting show. For me, it just felt like the vibe was lacking enthusiasm, optimism, just that the confidence that has been displayed on WWE television, December, November, October, September, August, July, when Triple H took over, like all that goodwill and feelings that you had watching Raw and SmackDown, more so SmackDown, it just felt like it's at a holding pattern and it just very vague. Hopefully that doesn't continue or, that vagueness increases because, man, there's been some really good stuff on SmackDown for the most part. You know, the Bloodline, Bray Wyatt. I know some people just it drags, but you know, people are interested because they want to see where it goes. Yeah, it just feels like the whole talk around the sale and Vince McMahon potentially returning has really just like how do I put it? Just it's maybe that's the best term. It's smothered what has been built the past 5 months, where it's over. Like you see it, but it's like it doesn't have the freedom to grow or be organic. It's just smothered, and it's like, okay, man, like is this just gonna? It's almost like whatever's been created the last 5 months with Triple H now is gonna have to submit to whatever Vince McMahon wants, which means most of the things that he's built little by little over time is just gonna dissipate. And then the main things that Vince like, he's gonna push. So we'll see what happens with this whole WWE thing. But man, overall SmackDown, I enjoyed the Gunther Braun Strowman match. The Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn, those guys always have great matches. I enjoyed everything, and just the whole Bloodline thing just really added another layer to that story. But outside of that, man, the show was very vague. Like a lot of stuff was very vague. Bray Wyatt stuff was pretty cool because, like, okay, we're gonna get some stuff with this Royal Rumble match between him and LA Knight. So I was like, all right, cool. But outside of Bray Wyatt and the Bloodline, man, it's just very vague. Very vague. Gunther's a bright spot. You can put him up there. But yeah, just a lot of vagueness and just things that, like I said, enthusiasm, optimism, just like, oh man, all right, cool. This gonna, man, you could do, like, it's just really weird. And I say that as someone that's been watching WWE all their life. Like, this is just a very weird time in WWE history. And I don't know. We just got to see how this plays out. But yeah, it's just very weird. Very weird to talk WWE being sold and the potential buyers and just Vince. Like, it's just very surreal. Like it's surreal. But that is my review for the January 13th episode of WWE Smackdown. Like, share, comment, subscribe. Give this video a thumbs up on YouTube. Follow me, Dedrian180, on TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram. And man, in the midst of all this, let's have fun watching professional wrestling, because I certainly am. And thank you guys so much for being patient with all my reviews and stuff like that, and just the content I produce. Thank you guys so much. I greatly appreciate it. With that, I'm out.